Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the sixth edition of our quarterly Black Entrepreneurs Initiative, aka BAE. Thank you so much for joining us today from different sectors of the community. We are, as always, so glad to see you. My name is Aoife, and I will be your MC today. So I'm just making sure that everyone can see me and everything is good. I wish I could see everyone's smiling faces, but we're going to have to settle for just me on the screen right now. But first of all, again, I would like to once again say welcome each and every one of you for making time available for these conversations that we are about to have today. So welcome to our esteemed community members, our partners, our guests, and our speakers. Our audience, I know you guys are so excited to connect with the speakers from the Government of Canada today. So in our audience today are women, youths, entrepreneurs of Black African descent, representing different parts of the ecosystem and also giving us this huge opportunity to be able to have these conversations. So before we get started, let's just talk about some protocols. To all our participants and audience, this is a live information session. So you will have the opportunity to ask a few questions after the presentations. However, due to the short time, we will provide more information today online and engage actively with you in the chat room or the YouTube comment box. Our team of experts are online and will answer your general questions directly in the chat room. So please, 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 please use the chat room broadly. Please ask as many questions as you want. I want you to take opportunities from these conversations that we are having. If you would like to ask a question, please leave them in the chat box or the YouTube chat box. Like I said, our organizers will pick them from there and either send them to the speakers or they will add resources that you need through the chat box. So right now it looks like our Zoom is full, so I'm encouraging everyone to go to the YouTube link, www.youtube.com/CASA Foundation. I also encourage you to share the YouTube link with all your groups, association, and friends so that they also can take advantage of this session with our guests from the Government of Canada, our esteemed Black leaders, founders, and groups featured here today. So at this time, let me quickly welcome our guest speaker from the government, Imanzi Kater. It is a pleasure to have you here, Imanzi. Just a brief introduction of Imanzi. Imanzi is an economic policy advisor to the Government of Canada, Office of Small and Medium Enterprises at Public Services and Procurement Canada. I'm going to allow him to tell us a little bit more about himself and his team here today. But before I pass it over to Imanzi, Dr. Olu is also here with us. The CASA Foundation team is led by her and their regional partners who will share more about the new Black Advisory Hub shortly. Again, just want to thank everyone for coming and for everyone watching. I will now hand it over to Imanzi to get us started. So Imanzi, please take it from here for us.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ife, and thank you, CASA Foundation, for the invitation. We are delighted to be here today. So my name is Imanzi Katari, and I am with what used to be called the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises. We have now been rebranded to Procurement Assistance Canada within Public Services and Procurement Canada. So we are here to provide a brief overview on the opportunities for federal procurement. I'm here representing from the Ontario region. So I'm here with the Procurement Assistance Canada team based in Ontario and Toronto. I do also have my colleague here as well, Anton Moses from Procurement Assistance Canada, Quebec. I'll let him introduce himself briefly.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Imanzi. It's good to be here today. I represent, as Imanzi mentioned, the region of Quebec. So I will be taking the French portion of things, if there's any. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas. Laissez-le dans le clavardage où il y aura une session de questions à la fin, puis je pourrai les répondre pour vous. Merci. Thank you.
Merci, Antoine. So as Antoine mentioned, if you have any questions in French or in English, si vous posez les questions, that's, that we are totally available to answer any of your questions that you may have in English or in French. So let me start off by sharing my screen here. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. So today we are going to have actually a follow-up to what we had started originally. So we did do a presentation back in August, which was myth-busting federal procurement. And that just provided just some of the myths that are associated with federal procurement. So we do realize that there are many businesses, startups, founders that are joining us here today. And many of you either have heard of federal procurement, but for many of you, this is maybe the first time that you're hearing about federal procurement and what the opportunities and what is entailed when it comes to being a contractor and providing your goods and services to the federal government. So today's presentation will go a bit more in detail on how to do business with the government of Canada. So what the steps in the process is needed, and how best that you could look for opportunities, as well as what are the steps that are required of you. So before we get into that, just in terms of background, so Procurement Assistance Canada, so what we provide, so we support smaller and diverse businesses through their federal procurement process. We engage, we insist, and we inform businesses on the federal procurement process. So that is a big mandate as to what we do, as well as helping to reduce the barriers that businesses may encounter. So this is, again, we're very much outward facing. We do a lot of outreach and engagement events. We're very much connected and plugged into various different business associations, communities, and our main target is to get this information out there to the public and to let them know that, letting people know about the opportunities that may exist when it comes to federal procurement. So briefly, so the objective, so we'll go over this presentation. If at any point in time, if you have any questions, feel free to write in your questions in the chat. We will review and to respond to any questions that you may have. But in terms of the objective, so we'll go through the registration process. We'll go through how to find opportunities, how to bid on opportunities, and we'll touch a little bit on the security process. Now, usually this webinar is delivered in 2 hours, and we'll go into quite detail, but given the time constraints that we do have, so I'll be a little bit of an overview. So you may see that it could go a little bit quickly, but if you have any follow-up questions after today's session, feel free. We will provide our email addresses to our regional offices in Ontario and also in Quebec, or even if you're from the outside regions, you could also get in contact with us and we could redirect you as to where to go. So in terms of the opportunities for small and diverse businesses, so in terms of setting the context, so the Government of Canada is one of the largest buyers of goods and services in Canada. So the Government of Canada buys a wide range of goods and services each year, with contract values ranging from hundreds to billions of dollars, and awards of contracts to smaller businesses in Canada from 2017 to 2020, including of up to 74% of contracts valued at $1 million or less. So what this basically says is that the government is one of the largest buyers of goods and services. So annually, you're looking at a marketplace of about $15 to $20 billion annually, in which the government does procure goods and services. So if you are a business that are thinking about, selling your goods and services to the government, and if you are small businesses, we're here to let you know that the government actually does buy from small businesses, and in particular, as I will get into, from small and diverse businesses as well. And that's also a focus as to why the recent name change that we did is to make it identified that what we do and that we do provide procurement assistance to the small business community. So contracting with the Government of Canada, so Public Services and Procurement Canada is one of the main procurement arms for the federal government. It's important to note that procurement activities must be conducted in a fair, open, and transparent manner, and that all suppliers have an equal chance of doing business with us. So it is quite different than the private sector. When you are dealing with federal public sector contracts, we have to ensure that everyone has a fair opportunity of doing business with us. And so this is just something to note. So getting into a bit more detailed, so delegated authority. So for any goods, usually departments have a certain limit for which they could spend on their own without having to go through our department. If it's below a certain number, in this case, for up to 25,000 for goods, and then you're seeing there the number there for services and constructions, then those departments can do it on their own. But for anything above these amounts, then that's when they would need to come to Public Services and Procurement Canada. Okay, so one of the first things that you want to do when you are thinking about bidding on any opportunities for federal procurement is to go to the buy and sell website. So buyandsell.gc.ca, this is the main website and the main tool for searching for opportunities from the federal government. You could search for any current active opportunities, as well as you could search for any past previous opportunities. Now, certain jurisdictions may have their own platforms or tools that they may use, but for any federal procurement opportunities, this is where you will go. Now, we are gradually transitioning to a new platform, which will be announced later, which is the Canada Buys. But for right now, for the time being, no matter where you are in the country, this is where you could go. And my colleague, Anton Hill, will go over a bit more detail in terms of how to navigate and to use the site. But it is a free platform. You don't need to pay to access it. You would just access it, free, and then you could go ahead and start searching and start bidding on opportunities. Now, in terms of the registration process, so when you are thinking about getting into federal procurement, you will need to set up what's called the Supplier Registration Information System, SRI for short. Now, if you are an incorporated business, you will need that incorporation number, the CRA business number, to get what is called a procurement business number. So you would go through the steps. Basically, you would just create a profile indicating your business name, indicating the goods and services that you provide, your location, pretty much anything that you want to have associated with your profile. This is the process for which you would take. It's a very simple, straightforward process. And from there, you will then be featured on the buy and sell website in terms of the supplier registration. But this is just the first step. To actually then apply, you would then need to then start searching for opportunities. But again, the first step is just register. Very simple, straightforward process. Just also to note that there is an indigenous procurement strategy. So that is one strategy for which the government is looking to increase the spending coming from those indigenous businesses. I should also mention that there is also a key high priority for doing business with as many diverse businesses as possible. So in my earlier presentation, the Mythbusting presentation, I did talk about the various different priority areas for which the government wants to increase their procurement. So that is areas such as a green or the clean tech. So if you are a business, small business in the green and the clean tech space, there is opportunities for which the government wants to decrease their CO2 emissions, as well as reducing greenhouse gases. So that's a big focus, as well as increasing opportunities for women-owned businesses. That is also a key focus within procurement, and as well Black-owned businesses. So This is also a key focus. And so recently, there was a Black business pilot that was done earlier this year in 2021. And so this was a specific targeted pilot for Black-led businesses. And so there were a lot of lessons learned through that process. And so there is right now undergoing the social procurement policy. And with their social procurement policy, will give a lot of direction and clarity in terms of how the government wants to proceed when it comes to doing business with diverse suppliers. And so for up-to-date information about when the next opportunities may be, the best thing would be to search and to set up notifications on the Buy and Sell website, as well as other priorities such as youth, social enterprises. So these are all considerations for which Public Service and Procurement Canada and the Government of Canada is looking to increase the amount or to diversify their supply chain. Okay, so in terms of building networks, so one of the first things that you may want to do when you are thinking about getting into procurement is to understand who are your clients, right? And so when you're looking at the marketplace, what I mentioned earlier in terms of the marketplace of up to $15 to $20 billion, the marketplace being of clients representing departments and agencies. So whether that's, Health Canada, CRA, ESDC, whichever departments, those would be potential clients. And so really getting to know what their needs are, maybe even reaching out through the government electronic directory system. This is also where you could find out who are the key contacts and to understand if there is any upcoming opportunities, any low dollar opportunities, or just to better understand the needs of the client. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I mentioned in terms of knowing your business and knowing your clients. So when you're getting into procurement, federal procurement, you need to understand what does the research tell you. So in terms of the marketplace, again, it is dictated on a demand and supply. So whatever the government is looking to buy, that is something for which they will look to procure. So understanding who are the appropriate points of contacts outside or inside government, and also understand, do you want to be a prime or a subcontractor? And so understanding that could be part of your strategy, especially when you're first starting out. One of the more common questions that we do get is that, I'm a new business, beginning to diversify, my market clients. I'm looking at government as potential clients. How do I get into it? And so part of it is to understand, who's in the market, and maybe is it possible for you to maybe build up your experience to be a prime, or is there opportunities for which you could be a subcontractor, or are there low dollar value procurements for which you could get into? So just some things to keep in mind. We'll get onto that. So finding opportunities. So again, the Buy and Sell website, this is where you would go. This is also a good platform to find out, to see who are the main players, who have what contracts have been awarded for how much, if there has been any updates or any amendments to any contract, this is where you would go. So everything is very open source. So all the data is open source. This is where you'll be able to get all the information. And this is where also you could do a deep dive to understand, what is operating within the market. So the benefits of using the Buy and Sell is that it's the access for it is free. There's no registration required. You could search using plain language and filters. You could find data on any tenders, previous contracts, and you could also subscribe. And we'll show you that feature shortly. So if you find an interesting opportunity, you don't need to go back to it daily and just refresh to find out if there's any new opportunities that are posted. You could set up a notification, and then you could have those similar postings sent to you by email. So this is one way in which you could keep on top of those particular procurements that you are thinking of bidding on. So I mentioned about the open data, everything, the contract history, if there is any current standing offers or supply arrangements. I'll also touch on that shortly, but if there has been any pre-approved list of suppliers, this is also where you could go to find out, as well as if there are any industry associations. Sometimes there are other companies that are looking to maybe collaborate with other businesses, or looking to see which other businesses would be interested in a particular procurement, maybe in collaborating or partnership. So this is also where you can find that information. So low dollar value procurement. So I briefly mentioned about low dollar value procurement. So usually if it's below a certain amount, a particular department may be able to do the buying on their own. So they don't have to go through Public Services and Procurement Canada, which in that case, they may look to just reach out to those businesses that have registered on the supplier registration database. They may reach out to them and ask them to provide a quote and on their good or their service, and then from there, then their quote will be assessed, and maybe the lowest price of that quote may be awarded. Maybe three quotes may be needed. So in that case, that's where registering and being on the supplier registration database would be helpful, as well as also possibly reaching out. So I mentioned you could just Google government electronic directory system, and then that's where you would find a Government of Canada directory of all the key contacts. Probably not some those that are related into security, but most of the key contacts in terms of supervisors, managers, and you from there you could then be able to see who are the key contacts, and then follow up and introduce yourself and your company, and then see if there's any low dollar opportunities that may possibly exist. And so for competitive procurement, so procurement which is over 25,000 for goods and over 40,000 for services, is done using bids and quotes from potential suppliers using a variety of different methods. So there could be invitation to tender, request for proposal. That's usually the more common one that most people are aware of. There could be other ones such as request for standing offer or request for supply arrangement, and those ones are based on having to first be pre-qualified in a pool of suppliers first. And then once you have been assessed and you are successful in meeting all the conditions and requirements, you could then be placed in a pre-qualified pool. And then based on those pools, then when an opportunity does come up, then those that have only been pre-qualified may be invited then to bid. And yeah, so this next slide talks about the standing offer. So for commonly bought goods or services, as opposed to going out each time to the market, the government may look to set up a standing offer. So that's when standing offers are used to meet recurring needs when the department or agencies repeatedly order the same type of goods or services. And so a standing offer is from a potential supplier to provide the goods and services at a prearranged price. So basically, whatever the price is at that time, so they will look to then establish at a prearranged price based on whatever that commodity price is, and then establish then a standing offer based on that. Important to note, is not a contract until the government issues a call-up against a standing offer. So that means that basically until the government says that they actually want to then contact that those particular suppliers to then provide them with more details, and that's when they then start the process. So, and the government is under no obligation to purchase until that time. Supply arrangements are a similar method. So these are used when goods or services are bought on a regular basis, but when a standing offer is not suitable because of variables that could be related to price. And so again, similar setup in that they would set up a pre-qualified list of suppliers, and then those that have been pre-qualified. And then once an opportunity does arise, they may look to then reach out to those pre-qualified suppliers that are based on a list and whatever number that's on the list. And then from there, then they could invite them to then submit the pricing. So this is more common usually in situations if you provide professional services. So if you are a business and you provide professional services related to IT, non-IT, project management, HR, anything related to professional services. And so we do realize that, for many in many communities, obviously you realize that there are various consultants, and you can provide a consultant for your business. So in those types of situations, then that's where professional services could be used, and that's where these methods of supply can be used. So some of the methods of supply, so I mentioned pro services. So if for anyone that's interested in providing professional services, so when you go onto the buy and sell website, you'll be looking at that information for pro services. We also do offer a webinar. It's a 2-hour webinar focused solely on professional services. So if you want to know a bit more in depth in the details associated with supplying your services to the government, then I'll definitely recommend attending that webinar, which is on the buy and sell website on the events calendar page. And then they'll walk you through the process in terms of all these various different methods of supply. There's also language or linguistic service provider. So as you know, Government Canada is the largest buyer in services relating to translation and language processing. So that's another methods of supply, as well as temporary help services. So they also do look to procure temporary help services from time to time. Non-competitive approach. So if there are situations where there is a pressing emergency, then procurement, if it's not, and if any delays could jeopardize the public interest, such as forest fire that's happening out west, or even we're seeing in certain parts of the country flooding, and the government just needs to respond rapidly toward for that situation. In that situation, then that's when maybe a non-competitive approach, and they just want to look to just find a quick solution and who could deliver in that situation. Low dollar value I mentioned, and any ones that are not in the public interest, or if there's only one known supplier. So for example, if there's copyright or license or patent. Advanced contract award notice. So this is also interesting to note. So if there's only one known supplier for requirement, a buyer, meaning a department, the client, may choose to post on the buy and sell that they are thinking about possibly awarding a contract to a supplier that is well known and that is known for that type of requirement. And so before they do this, they will post advanced contract award notice. And then this is a public notice allowing other suppliers to signal their interest, that they are interested in bidding on the opportunity, and to demonstrate that they meet the ability, that they meet all the requirements. So again, this is also something we do see that posted. If you do meet the eligibility and requirements, then also respond to that as well. And that's also giving as much information and insights to the buyers and to the procurement specialists to understand, especially in a particular market where things could be changing. And so having the most up-to-date information in terms of who the potential suppliers are, what the businesses are, what the capacity in certain industries. So that would be also very important to note. Request for information. This is also a good opportunity. So this is request for information where the government is looking to find out as much information about a particular industry, sector, or commodity, and they may look to find out as much information. So for example, earlier this year, there was a request for information to find out the experiences coming from the Black business community. So there was a request for information, there was a survey that was sent out and it was distributed widely across from coast to coast in Canada. And so that was just to provide or to gain as much information as possible in terms of what are the experiences. So, understanding what the experiences are of Black businesses, if they have bid on any contracts, if they haven't, why not? What is their perception of federal procurement? What are their pain points? Just what are their general experiences when they do with that? And so this information, this data is extremely helpful in really understanding, what future procurement opportunities may be, especially as I mentioned earlier about the Black business pilot procurement that was launched earlier this year. So that was the first time that the department has ever done any such, focus or targeted pilot of the Black business procurement. And so we're hoping that this will encourage and spur more initiatives for the Black business procurement projects in the future. And so with this social procurement policy, as I mentioned, that's being developed and that will be implemented and rolled out, and that it will provide clarity and provide direction in terms of doing targeted and specific, because we do realize when you are working with various different communities and understanding the needs of the community, especially within the Black business community, racialized community, various other communities, communities that have historically been marginalized and have not been actively participating in federal procurement. And so really understanding that to increase the socioeconomic conditions of the communities. And so this is part of the strategy for which the Department, Public Service and Procurement Canada, as well as the Government of Canada, is really pushing towards really opening up those opportunities and making sure communities that have been not participating or not having access to federal procurement opportunities that are now allowing for that. Okay, so I'll touch on bidding on opportunities. So in terms of, many of the Government of Canada's contracts are awarded using a competitive process, which requires you to submit a bid. So if I take a step back, so I've talked about the registration process. You would go through that step, register, set up your profile, and then you're just there in a database. From there, you could then start searching for opportunities, or you could start searching for opportunities right away and just seeing what's out there in terms of in the market. And then from there, if you find something that could be of interest, you now want to start bidding, right? And so understanding the bidding process is also important as well. And we also do offer a webinar focused on bidding on opportunities. So again, that's a 2-hour webinar that we do offer across the region. So again, no matter what region that you are in Canada, if you're in Ontario, Quebec, Newfoundland, BC, Alberta, all our offices provide the same information, the same content, no matter where you go. But in terms of that opportunities, then basically you would understand what is the process, how to actually respond to a bid. And so part of the feedback we've been hearing from the small business community is really, how do I respond to this bid? What are they asking for? And so understanding the process, understanding the fundamentals, and which is why our office is here, is to help businesses really just understand the fundamentals on it. And so the first thing you should do is, so as a supplier, you should ask yourself, am I capable of offering the service or the product requested? Do I meet the evaluation criteria? Am I willing to accept all the terms and conditions? And so if you answered no to any of these questions, then that particular opportunity may not be for you at that time. So, when you're looking through it, so I think maybe it would be a little bit different than maybe, anyone that has any experience in, the nonprofit or grant, in terms of, you're looking to apply to as many grants that you could be aligned towards, in terms of what you could be eligible for. Similar with procurement, in terms of that, in terms of doing business with a government, it is an open competition. And so one of the things is to really understand, am I capable, and understanding, if there is opportunities at this point in time, or do I need to keep looking for when those are opportunities? And so understanding where you fit in that as well is also important. So attention to detail. So following the instructions, so reading all the terms and conditions thoroughly. Ensure that you address all of the evaluation criteria. The mandatory requirements are especially important, as these bids that meet the terms and conditions will be further evaluated. And to make sure you complete and assign each certification completely and accurately. And actually, a good point on this was when touching on, again, the Black Business pilot procurement that they did earlier this year. And part of the conditions when people were submitting their proposal, there was an attestation. So that attestation was, to check off that you were, a Black-led business. And so for that, that was a crucial part of the application. And so, because by attesting on that part, they would then be able to evaluate that proposal as the Black Business pilot proposal. And so procurement. And so because it was a targeted initiative, and that they were looking to specifically reaching out and give preference to those that are Black-led businesses first, that's where that attestation became really important. So just looking through the application thoroughly, making sure that you don't skip out on anything that is mandatory is important. So that's just, again, something to keep in mind, even going forward, like for any types of proposals that you may look to bid on. So again, when you're going through the process, seeing, so once a statement of work is prepared, for fairness, you may only communicate with the contracting authority, indicate on the document. So once you are ready to actually bid on a procurement, you'd open up the procurement, and actually we'll show you how to search for it. But then you would open up the attachment, and in the first page, just before the table of contents, in the cover page, there would be a contact person that would be the procurement contracting officer. So for any questions that you may have regarding whether if something doesn't make sense, you need some clarification, you need to confirm something about the deadline or the requirements, for that, you would need to contact the procurement official that's indicated on there. And you should definitely contact them as soon as possible. Don't wait until the end or where it's closer to the deadline. Contact them as soon as possible, and then so they could take that into consideration and provide you with a response. So submitting your bid, so knowing when your bid closing date is important. Check for any amendments, sign the document as I mentioned, ensure the proposal follows the required format. So one of the more common questions that we do get a lot is there a format that I should follow when I am applying or submitting a proposal to bid? And so the answer to that question is no. At least we don't provide, our office, Procurement Assistance Canada, we don't provide an actual sort of guideline specific or a template. However, what we will advise suppliers is to walk through or to read through the table of contents, because once you read through that, and usually the first few pages will indicate how to actually structure your proposal. So everything in terms of the number of pages, the type of font, the headings, what is required in terms of the technical, in terms of the financials, anything that is associated, in terms of how to organize it, essentially will be indicated on those first pages. And so you just follow that exactly to a T, right? And you just go through all of that. So again, that's just a tip, to follow. Okay, security clearance. So this is the last thing I'll touch on. So for all procurement processes, there will be a security requirement that will be needed. So for contracts that require an organization clearance, you can apply for screening in advance. For contracts that require personnel clearance, you can apply for the screening once you have been awarded a contract or qualified in either a standing offer or supply arrangement. But for any questions, you would definitely contact the contracting officer. So if you're first starting out and you don't have a security clearance, which for most people, when they're, usually the first time, they don't have security clearance, contacting the contracting officer to see, or what is the process, but actually in the bid itself, they'll actually specify what level of security clearance is needed and what is the steps in the process associated with it. So again, understanding that process and also making sure that you give yourself sufficient time, in terms of the security process. So again, that's just something to keep in mind in terms of the deadlines. There could also be mandatory electronic fingerprints as well. So that'll also be stated in the bid, as well as the mandatory credit checks. So for any sensitive information, they will require for mandatory credit check as well. And for more information for that, you would contact the security office. And then here's the information for the contract security program. This is just the main office there, but you could always contact the procurement official that's indicated on that bid, or their email and their website. And then fraud, so I just want to mention this, if there, we do take fraud very seriously. So we do have a fraud tip line. So you can always report anything, any wrongdoing, and we do take that anonymously. And so lastly, once you have been awarded a contract, it's essential to remember that without a contract in place, there's no mechanism for payment. So making sure that work is only performed once a contract is in place. For purchase orders, so anything that is under 25,000, a purchase order may be used as a contract. So that's just something that once it is in place, then you'll be notified in terms of the process for that. And so payments, generally speaking, the government has within 30 days following receipt of an invoice to issue a payment. And so also payments could also be made from the departmental credit card issued to eligible procurement and administrative officers that permit them to buy at low dollar value procurement. So I mentioned this about the electronic procurement system, EPS, so Canada Buys. So gradually it will be moving and shifting to the Canada Buys SAP Ariba, but for the time being, all procurement opportunities are available on the buy and sell website. So this is still the main authoritative site for which you would find opportunities. But in the meantime, you could also set up a profile and have notifications sent to you so that when the Canada Buys and SAP does eventually go live, you'll have access to all of that information. And so this is just a wrap up of some of our seminars. So today was just a high level on doing business with the Government of Canada. So again, this webinar is usually our sort of prerequisite webinar because we'll give you a good high level overview of the details associated with federal procurement. We also have other webinars defining opportunities, bidding on opportunities, as well as professional services and security clearance. So you could take these in any order, but these will also help you in your journey as you're starting off as a business that's thinking about getting into federal procurement. And then also in terms of our contact information, so we have our main national phone number, as well as our national website email address. We also have regional emails from across Canada. So if you're in Ontario, you can contact us. If you're in Quebec, National Capital Region, Pacific, Western, you can contact them. And so in terms of the model of Procurement Assistance Canada, so it is very much regional focus. So, we do try to help out and support the businesses that are based in the region and really understanding the issues and also able to set up one-on-ones. So in terms of our services, after you attend any one of our webinars, if you want to set up a one-on-one consultation with us, then you can simply just send us an email and we can set up a one-on-one consultation that's specifically related to your business and procurement. And so that's also a value-added service that we do provide. But if you are joining us from any region, that's fine. And you can definitely follow up with any of the regions here, or definitely send us an email and we can redirect you as to where to go. So I will stop sharing my screen here, and I will quickly invite my colleague Anton to share a little bit on the buy and sell website.
Yes, thank you, Mansi. There's a lot of people asking questions on YouTube and in the chat, so we'll come back to that during our Q&A portion. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. Could you guys confirm that you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So you guys should see my Google page right now. So basically, when you want to access our website, it's fairly simple. You can open a Google page and just type buy and sell. And it's usually the first link that appears on the search list on the results. For the sake of time, I'm not going to keep opening each link. I already have some pre-open tabs, but usually you would just click on them yourself and it will take you on the page. So once you click on the first link on the results page of Google, this is where you end up. This is our main page. The main thing that I always recommend first-time suppliers that want to learn about the website, just to go over things, is under the tab for businesses, there's the section resources for businesses. So when you click on this, which is basically this, you get access to a bunch of links that take you all over the website and teach you a bunch of definitions on the wording. It's basically a good place to start because you get a lot of information. So it takes you to the tenders page where you can search up different keywords and find tenders that are active or no longer active, but just to get a sense of the stuff that are being bought by the federal government. GSIN codes, this is something that is very important, which is the goods and services identification number, which is the coding that we use to identify the goods and services for easy tracking whenever we have tenders. We have the supplier registration information database, which is basically the most important thing for new suppliers, because this is where you would register as for a procurement business number. So once you've talked with Revenue Canada and that you have your registered Canadian business, you have your BN, which is your business number, your Canadian business number. And once you want to start selling to the federal government, you need the PBN, which Imanzi mentioned earlier, which is the procurement business number. And the only way to get that is to go on this section of our website, enter your information, and then within 2 business days, you'll get a PBN, which will then give you access to easy access to bid on opportunities on our website. So that's the main important thing that I would retain from the resources for business section. Otherwise, when you go back to our main page, you guys have access to a few tabs, a few filters, I would say, for the tenders search bar. So just as an example, I'm gonna go here, new today. So here you have the search bar. You'll be able to enter keywords and find all kinds of stuff. So an example that I'm using currently for the region of Quebec, and for the sake of my example, I'm going to go with this. So let's say that you're a supplier who is selling fabric textile. For example, I'm a supplier that is selling polyester, materials made out of polyester for tents. So I'm going to type tent as a keyword just to see what comes up. So at the moment, there's no results. That's because the selected filters do not correspond, published today. So there's a big chance that there weren't any tenders related to tents that were published today. So I'm going to remove that filter. And as you see, just by doing that, I've opened up over 361 results. And I can keep narrowing this down with a bunch more filters. So for the specific tender that I'm looking for, it's in the region of Quebec. So here I would go in location and I would click on Quebec. And once I do that, you have 70 results that come up for tent in the region of Quebec. And once again, I want to get a more specific result. So I would go tender notice status, and I only want the active ones. So as you can see, there's 33 that are expired, and there's 34 that have already been awarded. So I only want the active ones. And this is exactly what I wanted to show you, which is the Correctional Services Canada department that is looking for netting and type of fabrics, polyester, nylon. And this tender is closing on December 15th. So there's still about a month left, and potential suppliers can bid on this. Earlier, Imanzi was talking about getting to know more about his potential tender, getting some information. So when you click on a tender result for an active tender result, here you have the publication date, the closing date, you have the GSIN code that I was mentioning earlier. So N8340 is the GSIN code, the good and services identification number that we use for tents and tarpaulins. So this is something that as a supplier who sells these products, I would note this down and I would keep this for future searches. And if you go further down, here you have the contact information. So this is a very important thing to remember, because this contact is the person that you will be reaching out to get more information, to learn more, and just ask your questions about the contract, the tender itself. And further down, you have the PDF documents with a lot more detail, with a lot more information. We go more into depth of what the need is. And once again, you have the information relating to the contact, the closing date, and all that pertinent stuff. One other thing that I would highly recommend when you're researching or trying to find opportunities on this specific section of our website, when you're looking for tenders, is this little part over here. So here you can see that we have 3 icons, and this icon right here, the email notification. This is very important because one of the things we get often as people who deal with suppliers is, do I really have to go back on the website each time? Isn't there an easier way for me to get access to this information? So email notification, what it allows you to do is, for example, I can come and get the GSIN code for tents, and I can type it here. And when I click search, it will be using the GSIN code as a reference. And as you can see right now, there's only one tender that meets all the filters that I've applied. And to make it easier on myself, for me to have easier access to this information, I would click on email. And here I would enter my personal email. And here you see the GSIN code is there with all the filters that I've applied. I answer a security question, and then I submit. This will make it easier for you to have access to all this information. You will get updates on your personal email. So this is something that I would do too. We offer a variety of other webinars. I know we're short on time, so I'm going to do this quick. So when you go back on resources for businesses, there's a part here that says seminars and events. Imanzi also mentioned this earlier, but once you go on this link, you can click on here, event calendar, view full list of upcoming events. So Procurement Assistance Canada has 6 regional offices across the country. So you guys have access to a lot of resources, and you are always welcome to reach out to us. You have here in the region of Quebec, obviously our content is mostly in French. I'm sorry, I've been talking mostly in English, but si jamais vous avez des questions pour les francophones qui écoutent cette conférence, n'hésitez pas. La région du Québec, on est vraiment ouvert pour vous. Le contenu qu'on offre est majoritairement en anglais. En français, excusez-moi. Puis on offre un peu de contenu en anglais aussi, mais on offre des séances personnalisées aussi. Si vous voulez parler, si vous avez des questions spécifiques, n'hésitez pas. Je vais laisser mes coordonnées dans le clavardage. Vous pouvez nous contacter quand vous voulez. Il nous fera un plaisir de vous parler et de répondre à vos questions. Et comme je le mentionnais, ici, vous avez le calendrier des événements. Vous avez vraiment accès à tous les événements qui vont avoir lieu dans les prochaines semaines, dans les prochains mois. Inscrivez-vous, venez partager vos expériences, puis poser vos questions. On est là pour vous. So we're here for you guys. The event calendar is updated frequently, so you have access to all our content. The webinar that Imanzi presented today, we have practical workshops where we take you step by step how to register as a supplier for the federal government. We have a lot of content for you guys, so please feel free to get in touch with us. So I'm going to stop here with my little demo of buy and sell. If you guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Okay, merci Antoine. This was a great overview, and hopefully people found this useful in terms of the how to navigate and to use the buy and sell. In terms of maybe looking at some of the questions here, and I could see that you did respond to some of these suppliers. So one question that I could see here, so in terms of how does COVID influence the application process to business owners and their services they're providing COVID requirements as a prerequisite to becoming a partner with the Government of Canada? So in terms of COVID, I'll touch on that. So at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a high response in terms of providing PPE supports that the government was looking to procure. If you go onto the buy and sell website, you'll still see it there on the home page. There is a section there for COVID response. You can find out more information on that. As we're sort of getting into the next phase, I guess, of the pandemic, and sort of slowly the crisis is sort of going a bit downwards. A lot of that information, a lot of the responses would be updated on the website in terms of what's going to be required or what the various departments are going to be involved in that. So definitely, I would definitely encourage you to check out the buy and sell on the COVID homepage for that. Another question here I'm seeing.
There was one French question that came up earlier, if I can just answer that.
Yeah.
So the question was, allons-nous être financés pour toutes les offres que nous gagnerons ou existe-t-il un arrangement avec les banques pour répondre aux besoins de financement des entrepreneurs qui se missionnent pour des projets? Alors, pour répondre à votre question, la plupart des appels d'offres qui sont publiés sur achat et vente, si vous gagnez, si le contrat est octroyé à vous, c'est le gouvernement qui va financer le projet au complet. Il n'y a pas d'arrangement avec les banques. Et si jamais il y a des besoins où le projet va coûter plus cher que prévu, il y aura des amendements qui vont être faits. C'est vraiment une gestion qui est faite entre vous puis l'autorité contractante. Vous allez être suivi tout au long du projet, ne vous inquiétez pas. Chaque fois qu'il y aura un besoin, vous allez rentrer en communication avec l'agent en charge du projet et vous pourrez prendre une entente avec eux, spécialement pour tout ce qui est financement.
Super, merci Antoine. Another question here, are startups eligible to bid for projects, or are there some conditions to fulfill for this bidding process? So good question. That's definitely a question we do get quite often, especially as we are engaging with a lot of startups and innovators, and small and medium enterprises. So in terms of the opportunities or eligibility, it could vary. So, you could be a sole proprietor, you could be a consultant, but only one person. And, if there is that opportunity, you could be eligible for that. For some other more complex projects, or in some cases, let's say for professional services that may require some additional requirements, in terms of referenceable projects, and or a certain number of employees. And so depending on the criteria and the requirement, it'll be specified in that bid. But generally speaking, procurement is eligible. You could be eligible at any stage in which you're at. It just depends specifically on the bid that's being posted. So definitely paying attention to the requirements, looking to see then, if this is something that you could be eligible to bid on. I'm just trying to see here. So yeah, if there's
I think there's
any
one more
more,
French question that I see.
okay.
Ai-je besoin de garant, de sponsor ou de partenaire pour soumissionner? La réponse pour cette question est, ça dépend vraiment de l'appel d'offres. On appelle ça une demande de parrainage. Pour les demandes de parrainage, la plupart du temps, c'est vraiment l'autorité contractante, comme Imanzi l'a mentionné, dépendamment de la complexité de la demande, du projet. S'il y a des grosses demandes de sécurité, là, oui, il pourrait y avoir une demande de parrainage. Mais encore une fois, l'autorité contractante qui s'occupe de l'appel d'offres va vous expliquer comment procéder. D'habitude, pour les demandes de parrainage, c'est vraiment notre département de sécurité qui s'en occupe. Nous avons un courriel générique où vous pouvez adresser votre demande, puis le parrainage se fait d'habitude quand même assez bien, dépendamment du besoin, puis de l'urgence de la demande. Mais vous serez bien guidé à travers tout ça si c'est un appel d'offres qui le requiert.
Great. Yeah, and so definitely, if anyone has like questions related to security and the security clearance process, definitely encourage anyone if they're interested to take the security clearance webinar. We will go into a bit more detail on the process, and so that's definitely an area which sometimes like we overlook, and sometimes we find out and saying, oh, we need a security clearance process, and so that's definitely something to take into consideration. So definitely check out our security clearance webinar for that. But yeah, I think at this time I'll leave it open. Maybe I'll hand it back to the host, Dr. Oletoyin.
Absolutely.